Our next session is somehow unique. We will be having a fireside chat moderated by the one and only CEO and co-founder of AltoVita, Vivi Himmel.
Hello, everyone. I must say it's really, really good to be here. Not sure if many of you know, I've just given birth to a beautiful baby boy about 3 weeks ago. So it's really exciting to see everybody in their smiles and their beautiful outfits away from the nappies and the feeding. I want to say thank you to everyone who's made their time to be here. Thank you so much to our incredible partners who have supported us over the past few years. And it's such an absolute honor to be able to host the Altos again for the 5th time in a row now. In this fireside chat session, I am honored to introduce someone who I truly, truly admire, someone I have been able to get to know incredibly well, personally and professionally over the past few years. Actually, only for the past year, and someone who is a visionary leader, someone whose career and expertise exemplify transformation and innovation in global mobility. She is our personal mentor to me and Carolina, and she's also part of our AltoVita advisory board. Please join me and welcome Karen FitzGerald, VP. Welcome to the Altos.
Thank you for the introduction.
Karen, tell us what you love about your current role at NBCUniversal and how does it stand out compared to your other previous roles at PwC, RBS, and Rothschild?
I think, were we going to show a video first?
Yeah, sorry. I would love to hear from you first.
Okay, perfect. I guess for me, the main difference... Oh, sorry, was I sitting on that now? The main difference, really, I mean, NBCUniversal, my link to the video, which you'll see in a minute, was my first response was, what isn't there to love when you just see the video? So I think, seriously, though, the past 8 years at NBCUniversal, I've been in global mobility for over 20 years. 8 years before that, I was in general HR, so came through the HR function. I think with NBCUniversal, it's such a diverse company. No 2 days are the same. One day, myself and my team might be dealing with news correspondents or journalists who are taken out into war-torn zones. Next, we're dealing with producers, creatives, and then the next day we might be dealing with somebody who's maybe building a theme park in Bedford, perhaps, in the not too distant future. So I feel really, really lucky that, that I work for this organisation. I think the other thing that I've really emphasised in this role is to build lots of networks. It's so important for me to build personal relationships and networks with my senior stakeholders within the company, all the way up to the most senior of CEO, because that helps me continue to get global mobility at the forefront of the strategic thinking. And also, any high-level conversations that are happening, people are thinking about global mobility because we don't let them forget us, really. And I think, that is really crucial. I think the relationships, and I'm sure most of you in this room nurture certain relationships, but for me, that is one of the key things that I've really focused on in NBCUniversal and has made it significantly different place to work.
Well, it is one hell of a brand and company to work for. Well, as the 20th century ushered to a new era of entertainment with meteoric rise of the film industry, in 1910, Universal Film was born, and then followed by NBC in 1920s. The breadth of the brands is enormous, right? From MSNBC, NBC, the theme parks, Rotten Tomato. I saw Simone Biles as well, so participation in the Olympics, the theme parks coming up in Bedford. There is one philosophy that unites it all, called the symphony. Mm-hmm. Can you elaborate what that means and how this ties together with technology, innovation, and transformation?
So symphony really is as it says, right? So it's all about collaboration. So across the company, we have a huge number of different diverse brands and products, as Vivi has just shared some of them, just a small part. I mean, to be honest, I've been here for 8 years and I still learn, oh my gosh, we've got a bit of that pie as well. We call it internally our secret sauce. There's not really very much secrecy around it. But it's really about how can we engage our different businesses to support and help grow our other businesses. So one of the things that, we kind of have is we've got great leaders, as does everybody else, right? We all have the best leaders in our organisations. But we have different businesses. So as Vivi shared, we have parks, we have studios, we have TV networks, we have news, we have cable. And symphony is one of these things that tries to bring this all together. So an example would be, if you think about, if any of you have been to any of our theme parks, when you go into those theme parks, you might bump into a Minion, right? Or you might go on the Fast and Furious ride. That's symphony. That's bringing our movie products into the theme park. On the sizzle reel there, you will have seen Wicked. I don't know, hands up, has anybody seen Wicked yet? Hopefully you enjoyed it. When we had the privilege of watching that before it was launched, I saw a theme park immediately within Wicked. So that, already you can see that there's future thinking around that whole symphony. And also, one of the things that I ask you all to look out for next time you're watching a movie, it tends to be that we use those platforms to advertise other platforms. So if you're watching a movie and they happen to be watching the news, you'll pretty much see that will be MSNBC, CNBC, or NBC News. So we plant products, even in some of our animation movies, we plant other areas of our business within to the corporate side of things. And that's really what we continue to try and do the whole way through.
With so many different potentially demands from the different brands, how does that translate to employee experience? How are the profiles of the NBCUniversal employees?
I can share some of that. So we do try to, I try to pride myself and my team on our employee moves being very bespoke. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is we have a very flexible policy. I don't like to use the word policy, if I'm honest. I hate it. I remember starting my career and way back in however many years it was, 28 years ago, people used to say, sorry, it's not part of the policy, you can't do that. And I hate that with a passion. So I really try to kind of align to guidelines. Anything is possible, right? We can make it possible and we can be can-do people. And that's what I really try to encourage my team to work with. So really we work very closely with each of the businesses and the budgets. You'll be surprised to know that our news area has a lot less of a budget than maybe our film area. Not really that obvious, obviously. And so we have to work within that kind of space. We tend to also ensure that we're aligning the guidelines. So what we do is we have compliance, as you'd expect, that is non-negotiable. We have to cover off the immigration and the tax support. Then we have what we call our core relocation, which is what we would see as our duty of care for moving somebody overseas. And then we have the enhanced piece. The enhanced piece is really where we start to chat to the business around what the rationale for the move is and understand what the budget is. We then mock up a kind of a program or a package for an individual, and then we'll work with the individual. and get to know them a little bit more to understand whether that's fit for purpose. So we do a lot of hand-holding still within the organisation. It's very much the nature of NBCUniversal.
So I guess that's how you set the Not Call Policy with Passion program, apart from the other programs that we see outside within the Fortune 2000 companies. So then, how does that translate to housing properties? I suppose that would fall under the enhance, not
so
call
there's always
policy.
A core. Yeah. So whenever we move anybody, we will always have the core package will include some kind of temporary accommodation, and that can then be enhanced to further weeks, months in some cases if individuals need it. One of the things that as a team we've really started to focus on, which we hadn't done, it was almost like a light bulb moment having spoken and spent time with Vivi and Carolina, was actually having preferred properties rather than preferred suppliers. And why I say that is because, you know, the reality is, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. We have been let down by other providers in the temp housing space, and assumed that the quality and standard is just, you know, at a certain level, and it really isn't. It really isn't. So we kind of decided we can no longer really just rely on the brand of corporate housing, but actually we need to start looking at the actual properties. And so doing some work with Vivi and Carolina, what we did was we actually mocked up in the areas in particular that we work through, so London, New York, LA, Miami, were the kind of four main areas. What are the properties that are up to the standard that we expect at NBCUniversal within the kind of price points that we know that if we put people in there, we're not going to have challenges or concerns. And also it means that actually we can vet them every year. So if we've got a portfolio of properties that we say we only want our people to go into these properties within this distance, we know as a team that we know what we're putting our people into. The other thing that we did to kind of align to that as well, Vivi, was we did, if anybody's seen The Secret Boss, we did kind of secret stays. So we told out a number of our vendors that we wanted a property in New York, London and LA. And my team went and stayed, different individuals from my team went and stayed in those properties. And from the moment of asking for the property through to the moment of vacating, we were assessing that company and the property. I'm not going to share the results live on stage, but if anyone wants to grab me for a drink and find out, it's fascinating actually that you'd expect a certain standard, especially when you know a potential client is going in there, but we really didn't. So there was some really good learnings that came out of the back of that as well.
Before we move on to some other questions, perhaps we can take one or two questions from the audience, if any.
Everyone's shy.
No?
There's one at the back.
Yeah.
Hi, Karen. Thanks for your time. What's the most difficult part of your job if you had to pick just one part?
Keeping everybody happy. You know, one of the things that is challenging, and you would expect this, I think, in the industry, we do have some real divas, and they expect the world. And it's really, you know, the buck stops with me as the leader of Global Mobility to really make sure that they are being reasonable in their asks and having some of those difficult conversations. So that can be quite tough. I think the other thing is, you know, the way the world is now, we just don't know what's going to happen. So if we do have somebody or people living and working in a location where all of a sudden something happens, that can be really difficult. You know, most recently with Russia and Ukraine, we had to deal with individuals who were, you know, basically leaving their families behind, and we were helping getting them out. Our news team, and we partnered with our news team, and we moved 2 families from Afghanistan. There were 2 families that had helped us for years and years and years in the reporting space, had been taxi drivers, had been runners, etc. And they lost everything in Afghanistan. And what was a really lovely story was my team managed to get to know these two families in the US. We rehoused them, and we, as a company, we fully supported them. And the lovely story is one of them is one of our news camera operators now in New York. So, you know, there's difficult conversations, but actually they always end out positive in the end. Try to keep that mantra.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Karen. You mentioned keeping everybody happy is the hardest part of the job. How can, I guess, SOP or protocol standard requirements support you in achieving that goal to keep everybody happy?
I mean, I think we as corporate leaders have to be very transparent. I don't know if any of you have heard me speak before. It's a little bit boring if you have, but my 3 words are transparency, communication, and trust. And they are 3 really important words to me, both from a personal perspective, but also from a partnership perspective with any vendors that we work with. If you lose one of those with me, then, you know, our relationship is probably not going to go very far in the future. Because for me, I think there's 2, we need to be trusting each other, and we need to be transparent around what we can deliver and what we can do. And so for me, that is the key, really, Vivi, in that space is, you know, be truthful to the clients that you're working with. If you really can't deliver, let someone else deliver. There's no point doing a half-hearted job, because it will come back to bite you in the future. And just really, you know, going back to my original point, really build on the networks and relationships, because the more and more you get to know a person and the culture that they work within, the better you will be able to serve them.
Yeah, wonderful. Just a little segue to the world and universe of VIP, case management,
Yes,
Karen.
yes, of course.
I think it was in the summer that we were able to support you in providing housing for
Yeah, I can share this.
Jason
I had this on. I was actually going to...
Armstrong, yeah.
Yeah.
And NBCUniversal is currently owned by Comcast, and he's the CFO of Comcast, right? And Comcast also owns Sky, which means he is a very important person, probably number 2 in the whole parent holding company. Perhaps you can share some insights?
Share. I had that on here, and I was going to ask her if she didn't mind me sharing it, but clearly she doesn't mind me sharing this. So yes, absolutely. I mean, one of the things, so I was fortunate enough to, again, through my networks, build a strong relationship with this senior executive. And it was a personal request. He basically connected back in with me and said, myself and my family are coming to the UK in August, prior to us going to the Olympics, because he had to go. He had to go to the Olympics because he's, you know, one of those senior executives, and we were doing a huge broadcast out there. And you know, when something like that happens, when it's somebody who is so senior and somebody who is so influential, I guess our first thought was the relationship that we had with Vivi and her team was actually, this is the right partnership. I did call them up and say, look, this is the scenario and we've got to get it right, because if we don't get it right, this could be bad for you guys as well, right? So, you know, it's having that honest conversation, as this is as high a level as it can pretty much get. If you don't want to do it, that's absolutely fine. But if you do, we've got to go all out. So what we actually ended up doing as a partnership is we went out and visited a number of properties. I then showcased those to the individual. We even did some little videos of properties. We then agreed which property was going to be the right one. My team then put some little gifts in the property for him and his children when he arrived. Vivi and the team, he was arriving really early, so as a gesture of goodwill and an investment to us as a company, allowed him to go into the property, I think, half a day earlier, which was hugely appreciated. Again, Vivi and the team put a little gift in there, just a little welcome pack. All the things that you think, you know, people do as a standard, they don't. So, you know, all of those little value adds really do make a difference. And the feedback that him and his wife and kids had for that experience and that feeling was huge, absolutely huge. So it helped with our reputation, and it helped with AltoVita's reputation within the organisation. And it was just a really basic, simple little thing, really. But sometimes we forget the small stuff.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much,
Thank
Karen.
you.
We've learned incredibly amount of insights today. Of course, you mentioned trust, transparency, and communication. I think we can apply that in many parts of our job. Thank you for spending the past 20 minutes with us here on stage. Please join me to thank Karen one more time.
We have now concluded the first part of the event. Please make your way to the dive bar for a 15-minute coffee and networking break. We will see you all back in the theater in 15 minutes. Thank you.